In chaos theory, a well-known principle called the butterfly effect maintains that the gentle riffle of a butterfly's wings can trigger an atmospheric chain reaction which produces a tornado hundreds of miles away. An awfully big butterfly must have flapped its wings on April 11, 1965. In terms of lives lost and area impacted, the Palm Sunday tornado outbreak is rivaled only by the April 3rd through 4th, 1974, and April 27th through 28th, 2011 super outbreaks. It is arguably the second worst Midwestern outbreak of the 20th century and one of the deadliest in history.
The most devastating series of tornadoes in many decades rips through 6 Midwestern states. In the wake of the twisters, there are nearly 250 people dead, with damages mounting to the hundreds of millions of dollars. Iowa, Wisconsin, Arkansas, Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan were all hard hit by the deadly tornadoes as they slashed across the heart of the Midwest.
Plenty of tornado outbreaks have equaled or eclipsed the Palm Sunday 1965 outbreak in terms of the number of tornadoes that occurred. What is unusual is the number of violent tornadoes in the Palm Sunday tornado outbreak. 19 rated at a brutal F4 and 2 possibly even an F5. A rarely assigned rating which indicates the extreme end of tornado damage. Even more significant is the appalling number of fatalities. The official death toll given in the Weather Bureau survey team's report of Palm Sunday tornadoes of 1965 gives a tally of 271 deaths. Add to that an Iowa tornado victim who died of his wounds the following month after the report was completed, and a total of 272 seems reasonable. Other figures also exist. Taking into account casualties who may have lingered for weeks, perhaps even months before succumbing to their injuries, and the exact number of deaths attributable to the tornadoes will probably never be known. But in a way, it really doesn't matter. Today, at a half century after the outbreak, whichever version of the death toll you choose translates into little more than a bloodless statistic. In the aftermath of that day, though, it was something far more immediate and real. Something that made facts and figures irrelevant. It was beloved faces. It was the timbre of familiar voices, the sound of vivacious laughter, the sparkle of bright, animated eyes. It was personalities, simple but endearing mannerisms and ways of doing things, senses of humor, interests and hobbies from the commonplace to the unique, ways of thinking and styles of communicating. It was hopes, dreams, values, goals, plans, and histories both individual and relational. It was people. Precious, priceless, irreplaceable loved ones, swept away suddenly and forever in a savage blast of wind and flying debris. It was a young mother who would never again look at picture books with her children. A middle-aged husband whose goofy grin would no longer make his wife smile. A 10-year-old whose days of playing catch with his dad had ended. A grandmother whose arms would never again enfold her grandchildren in a loving hug. That something as intangible as air could produce so much heartbreak and misery seems a marvel. The ripple effect of that butterfly's wings spread across the Great Lakes region from eastern Iowa to western Ohio to beget 11 hours of terror, months of grieving and picking up the pieces, and a sorrow which still today lies tucked away in the hearts of those who lost loved ones in the storms.
This is Eyewitness Weather. Look at the weather from coast to coast.
It was a warmer day. We played outside for quite a while, and the air seemed kind of heavy.
But it was a nice day, or I don't remember if it was bright and sunny, but it wasn't cold at all.
We were playing outside and we would mention it, and my dad was very attuned to weather, and he said there's a big storm coming.
I remember the sky being very ominous, very, very dark.
My dad is watching and he's looking at the sky, and the sky is turning this very murky green.
We were finishing up a report and sitting in a parking lot around Bridge Street and Stocking when we started to wonder about the weather.
It all began high overhead, thousands of feet aloft, where mighty rivers of wind known as jets flow at various levels through the ocean of air that surrounds our planet. By 1 a.m. that night, as thunderstorms flickered over Minneapolis and a cold rain fell in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a second weak surface low was shaping up over northeastern Kansas. Like its predecessor to the north, this low deepened significantly as it progressed into central Iowa, drawing with it a surge of warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico. Such was the setting on the late morning of April 11th, as showers and thunderstorms developed and strengthened throughout north central and northeast Iowa. By 12:45 CST, a band of particularly intense echoes that stretched from south of Mason City to north of Cedar Rapids was lighting up the WSR-57 radar in Des Moines. 15 minutes later, at 1 o'clock CST, CELS issued tornado forecast number 68 for extreme southern Wisconsin, extreme eastern Iowa, portions of northern Illinois. The statement read, "A few severe thunderstorms with large hail, damaging wind, and 1 or 2 tornadoes are expected." The forecast defined the threatened area with near pinpoint accuracy, but it came too late. The show had already begun. At 5:20 p.m. EST, the U.S. Weather Bureau issued a new tornado forecast for portions of northern Indiana, southern Michigan, and northwest Ohio. At 7 p.m., still another tornado forecast blocked out most of lower and central Michigan. News of damage began to filter in. Hell was breaking loose in northern Indiana. The staff at the South Bend office had never seen anything like it. The outbreak was spreading. As the present storms continued to grind northeastward across northern Indiana toward southeast Michigan and Toledo, more tornadoes were breaking out to the north in Grand Rapids and western Michigan.
We just started heading west because we thought maybe we should get out to the western part of the city and keep our eyes open. And when we got up by where Bridge Street intersects with Colville Road and Lake Michigan Drive, we saw the funnel.
Papa wasn't too happy about my going off to work, but...
Bedtime for Bonzo was on TV with Ronald Reagan. So we were watching that while we were having dinner, and then shortly after 7 o'clock, the winds picked up and the storm started.
All of a sudden, my mom started yelling to get to the basement. We were already in the basement. And she had seen the swing set do tumbles down the hill.
I just sat down in the living room and my husband walked into the dining room and he kind of pushed the curtain back and said, "Grab the kids."
We saw the tornado about 7 o'clock and it was just streaking across the sky.
This boy I was dating wanted to take me for a ride out to this Pine Island lake, and then as we got close to there, it started raining really hard.
You couldn't see. I had my window partly open, trying to follow the line on the road.
And the rain was getting muddier, and then we could see like sheet metal flying across the road in front of us, and still didn't realize how bad it was until we saw what looked like a couple of ducks trying to fly that weren't really getting anywhere.
We seen it coming, and the power lines were really moving, and I thought, if they come down, we're in trouble.
We could not see the road. So we turned into a gas station, and just as we did that, it picked the car up.
I was on M37, right in front of the Swan Inn, in our car.
And all of a sudden, it stopped just like somebody snapped up a window shade, and there was the tornado.
So I put the car right in the middle of the road, and probably within 100 yards, it turned.
When we tried to outrun it, we actually ended up in the air apparently, because you couldn't see hardly past the end of the hood, but at one point we saw 2 transformers in front of us, so we were up in the air.
They found me about 150 feet from the car, and for some reason the trunk was torn off the car and they found him in the trunk. And the only thing we could think is he maybe tried to climb out of the car because he couldn't get out of it.
I raced to my son's room, which was in the east, in the center of the house. My husband went to the southwest bedroom and picked up our daughter. As we came out of the bedrooms, he came out of the southwest bedroom and 2 windows blew out.
All of a sudden we seen high wires and the big high towers coming at us.
You could see right inside, and everything was just twisting and swirling, and there was like little whiffs of they would look like a whiff of smoke, I would say, or something.
We got over to 3 Mile, and we could see the funnel again, and it had already crossed the freeway.
Dad and Grandpa were out in the barn at the time milking the cows and saw the roof of the barn get lifted off and carried away.
We didn't know for sure what we were seeing. We all thought we saw what looked like 2 or 3 tornadoes literally over the south end of the lake.
The back of the roof came off and 23 windows were blown out.
We sat there for a couple minutes to let things calm down a little bit and then jumped out of the car and ran up to a house.
Then it got really, really dark and it got very windy, and it basically pushed our cruiser off the side of the road.
It seemed forever, but it was over very quickly. And all of a sudden, the neighbor next door, Pat Burke, just came over and he yells down the stairs and says, "Are you guys okay?" And we said, "Yeah."
I went over to the Swan Inn. There was a guy and his wife and his sister-in-law from Ohio. And they couldn't get out the front door because it was twisted.
I remember seeing that semi laying outside in the median, and the car that had been in front of us, it was gone. And then my partner said, "Yeah, it's over here in the field." And he went over there, and I stayed by the car and was radioing in, letting him know what was going on. And he came back and said the individual had passed away.
Some fishermen were coming back from Pine Island Lake, and they found me in the field. And they had a station wagon, so they put me on a Coke sign and put me in the back of the station wagon to take me to the hospital.
The back was blown out of the Swan Inn, and you could hear people in the field behind our home and rescue squads back there.
There was a drain ditch there, and there was a guy there laying down, face down. He was dead.
The only police presence was my partner, myself, and John Morris in X1. We were city cops, and we were even out of the city at that point. So we just decided, John and I, that we better start loading people up in the cruiser that need medical attention, that were able to move around. And we made a couple of shuttle trips down to the hospital.
There was a relatively new house to the immediate north of me on Biddeford, and I could see the house on the other side of that. And I said, "Oh, look, the blank," and I've forgotten their name, "home has got some damage." And my wife said to me, "The only reason you can see their home is because the home in between them is gone."
When we got by the Swan Inn, when we got in Alpine, there was somebody crying for help. So my friend and I, Ron, went over to see if we could assist. And there was a woman that was buried in cinder blocks.
We saw trees uprooted and houses smashed, and it was pretty intimidating.
There was a car on the side road, and how this guy got in that position, but he was half in his door window and half out, and I thought his head was gone. Well, it was his T-shirt that was over his head. He was dead.
It was scary, and our dad was on the Alpine Township Fire Department, so he went right away to help, to assist, and we didn't see him for 3 days.
We heard a siren blowing. Well, we pulled in there, and we took this guy, and we went in the fire station, and I can remember yet, the guy was standing there, finger on the siren. We said, "You know, the hell are you blowing a siren for?" And he says, "There's a tornado warning." I said, "A warning your foot?" I said, "It crossed Alpine and 6 Mile about 10 minutes ago." And he said, "It did?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Where'd you get this guy? Was he in an accident?" And I said, "No, we picked him up out of the ditch at 6 Mile and Alpine."
I was in the hospital for a month with fractured pelvic bone, 4 places, and cracked vertebrae, and lacerations and abrasions, and I was a mess. They wouldn't even let me see a mirror for a week.
A week later, we went away for Easter, and when we tried to come back, the sightseers were so thick we could not get into our driveway.
You can replace a barn, you can replace shingles, but 65 tornado took buildings down. Yeah, it was a sad time.
Air is invisible and practically intangible. Few realize its latent power or the horror and heartache it can inflict.
It was an experience, but I mean, would never want to go through it again. You know, never, no way.
Those who survived the second worst tornado outbreak of the 20th century will always, in various ways, bear its marks. And there are others who, though they never experienced the storms firsthand, were strangely and deeply affected by them.
I was fascinated by them, and still am. I'm not afraid of them. I'm very respectful, but I'm not afraid of them, as I know, get out, get downstairs.
50 years have passed since that day. Land blasted by the winds has sprouted new homes, farms and businesses, and scarred lives have moved on. Over the decades, time has worked its changes.
I have no lingering after effects or unusual fears of storms. I have a great respect for them.
There was no warning of it. And so that's one thing I've always instilled in my girls. If the weather and if the news says it's going to have a potential for that, be cautious.
It was amazing to walk out and see the debris and to see the houses laying in the street. It was scary, but like I say, we're very blessed that we made it.
We sometimes think it was a blessing in disguise because after that we got out of the milking business.
I think the thing that struck me so much was the willingness of just people to come together and do whatever they needed to do to help out their neighbors.
50 years ago, things are a lot different today with the technology and being able to predict things, and thank goodness.